Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be presenting the system that my project team has been working on for the past couple of months. A quick presentation on what it is, what it does, how it does it, and why this might be needed in a business setting. Hopefully it'll gather some of your interest and get some momentum behind this project. So we've affectionately called it ADS, which stands for a Dynamic Data Solution, which is what we really think it is. We're kind of saying that it's an everyday systematic way to sort and search for data files, emails, and corporate documents. So you might be asking yourself, why is this necessary? Who would need this type of system, and what type of organization might benefit from this? So with all the technological advances that have been going on in the world around us, the everyday employee might be swamped with online communications and data storage issues. So imagine sitting at your desk and all of a sudden you've got 50 emails in your inbox in the span of 1 hour. You've got X number of data files pertaining to your everyday work. You're constantly shifting between those Excel files, those Word documents, those documents that your company gives to you, something that your coworker put together, the emails in your inbox, and all of a sudden you don't know where anything is. So this leaves the everyday worker overwhelmed, lost, confused, on a constant search for those emails, those files, and those corporate documents that help them in their everyday work. So this is the type of situation that we're looking to solve. This is mainly geared towards companies that are doing a lot of data, a lot of communication via the internet. So maybe a large global company, a consumer-based company where there's a lot of different types of transactions going on. So maybe you're selling t-shirts on a global scale and you've got 50 million different customers and a bunch of different countries you serve, and you have X number of SKUs, and you need to keep track of it all. So wouldn't it be great to have a system that automatically stored emails, data files, and corporate documents via either the data folders that your company puts together or the web-based documents that they put out in a systematic way? And wouldn't it be even better if the system could also retrieve those emails, those files, those corporate documents, all by entering a simple keyword in a search bar, and all of a sudden, all your information that pertains to that keyword is just there on your screen? So with that kind of principle and that problem and solution in mind, I'm going to take you into kind of the inner workings of the system. We'll look at the interface, the how it works together, the kind of data storage that goes into this, and what might be needed to put this together. So the what. ADS allows users to quickly access relevant information via emails, data files, corporate information by simply entering keywords in the search bar. Users can then open all of these files and these emails that pertain to that keyword simply by double clicking on the icon next to the data, the file name or the email name. This adds user productivity by cutting down on the time a user spends manually searching their inbox or data folders. So it's countless minutes that add up over time where a user is sitting there manually searching for that email that they know pertains to this topic or that data file they put together last week but can't remember the name of. Users get all that information back because the system is automatically coding all of those files and those email communications and stringing them together via keywords. So now that you know what the system does from a conceptual basis and the problem it's trying to solve, it's best to visualize what the end users are going to be seeing and using and how they're going to be interacting with the system to give you an overall concept of what the system is actually doing so you can visualize it when I'm talking about the technical aspects that go in the background of this. So this is the initial screen that the user is going to come to. It's the login screen. This is a system that is downloaded on the end user's laptop, and they are required to log in because security is of the utmost importance to companies today. We really want to keep that information private. We want to make sure that we're upholding the security standards that each company has already set forth. So therefore, they're all given a user ID and a password. Of course, as we all know, things can go wrong. Users can forget that information. So there is an IT contact info button and a little kind of blurb about how they can get in touch with IT to maybe manually reset the data. Of course, passwords won't be stored because that would jeopardize the confidentiality, but maybe they can do a manual reset. So after the user logs in, they come to this home screen. As you can see, there's a place for our logo. The ads logo would go there in conjunction with the company logo, of course. There's a search bar, a simple faded graphic in the background, log off button off to the right-hand side. It displays who you are, your user ID, which is given to you by your company. It's also how you log into the system, all based on your company user ID information. Your job title, the date and time, just, as relevant information. If you have this open on one of your monitors, if you have multiple or on your main screen during the day, it's nice to have that date and time information right there for you. And off to the right-hand side, a list of most recent searches. So the system will track what you're frequently looking for. So maybe during the course of a week, if a user is frequenting the same type of information or the same, let's say, part number or SKU number over and over again, it's really relevant that week, it would have that information right there on the right-hand side. So the user could just quickly click on the files that they're most often visiting. So after a user has entered information in that search bar up here, it's a drop down to show suggestions to the user. So maybe, like I said, if they're frequenting the same type of part number or the same person's name or subject's name, it'll kind of show that relevant related field where if you're typing in the word relevant and you get to REL, it automatically populates the rest for you, but it doesn't automatically search for it. It gives you the option to click on that one or maybe a couple other words that have similar names. Again, there's the logo over here, a home button. They can get back to that initial main screen if they want to get rid of all of this information that is populated down here. After they've entered, let's say, a keyword in here, let's say it's a part number, they click on it, goes in here, emails start popping up with that part number maybe in the email subject line, or maybe it's back in the text of the email, but it's still relevant. So a little envelope icon pops up, the size of the email and the files may be attached, the date on which the email was received or sent, the subject of that email, the different people it went to, and let's say there's 5 of them here. So they would kind of populate in that same format over and over again. If you get to have a lot of them, there would be a scroll bar over here where you could scroll and see all the ones that were relevant. Same type of information would populate from the related documents. So that'd be an icon telling you what type of file it is. So we're looking at Excel, PowerPoint, Word, maybe it's a PDF. Maybe the company uses a completely different type of system, and those little icons would pop up here so that the end user knows what type of file it is when they're clicking on it. Again, the file name, the date it was created or last edited, and the document owner. So maybe the end user didn't create this, but they have the security permissions from their company to be working on this type of file or accessing it. So they would see who actually created it in the first place. So for large companies, maybe you have a data analyst who creates a lot of the data files and the end users just go in and access them, but they don't actually populate any fields. Or maybe it's a cross-functional file where the logistics individual has created it, but sales has input in marketing. So you would see who the owner was here. And again, list of most recent searches that you can click back to when you're working. Up here, we've included date range filters. So maybe you only want files from the past year, the past week, the past month, so on and so forth. If you're working with part numbers specifically or certain reoccurring themes, of course, it's nice to be able to filter down that information by date because maybe the same type of information appears year after year or month after month. It's not always pertinent. This week where it was relevant 2 months ago. The file type filter, so maybe you only want to see Excel files, maybe you only want to see PowerPoints and presentations. Document owner filter, maybe you're looking for a specific department or a specific individual that creates certain files. You know it was that person, but you don't remember the name. You can filter it down there. And then a reset filter button. So you can clear all of these by simply clicking on this button. And when you want to log off and you've gone up into that right-hand side and you've clicked on that log off button, you're going to come back to this screen where it has the logo. It asks you if you want to log off, yes or no. And then, of course, the end user can select. So that's given you a little bit of an overview of what the system is, how an end user might interact with the interfaces of the system, the type of information that's being populated by the system, and really kind of how it works from an end user perspective. Now, what goes into creating a system of this nature? What's the backbone to this type of system? What do we have to do to get there? So there's 4 main project phases that the project team is going to have to go through. We've already kind of done some of the legwork here, as you can see throughout the presentation, but there are other areas in which need to be further developed. So I'd say we're a little bit, maybe 20% there. So the first one is this project planning phase up in the left-hand quadrant. So to find the opportunity, assemble the team, create the proposal, define the timeline. So the opportunity has been defined, but of course we can take that into a business scope. We can calculate the dollar savings, the productivity increases, and all of that get for a specific company if they choose to take on this project. Assemble the team. We have kind of the bare bones here, but of course we're looking for diverse individuals to add to the team. You're going to need someone that's really good at coding to work on the back-end systems. You're going to need individuals who are good at training to implement the system at the end, individuals that are more end user driven and want to help with the user interface. Of course, getting all different kinds of perspectives together to create a really diverse, well-rounded team to help work through all the kinks in the project planning phase so that when the system is rolled out, there's minimal changes that need to be made. Create the proposal. So after the company has brought us on, of course, we would have to sit there, look at the facts and figures, and create the proposal to that company on how much this is going to cost, the time frame needed. Of course, that kind of funnels into point 4, define the timeline, the whole scope of the project, really. How many users is this impacting? How many different systems do they have? That's all going to go into kind of creating our initial proposal to the company. But of course, we're going to have to work more into that in the next couple of phases. So down in the bottom left-hand side, define the requirements. We have to identify what the company has existing already. So what systems do they use? Do they use Outlook or do they use another system? Do they want us to try and connect to maybe an ERP system? Would be difficult, but of course, we want to look at the whole scope of the project. What's their ideal state? And then how can we get there or get most of the way there? So what systems do they have? What security systems are we working with? What do we really have to kind of bring together in the back end to make this work? Establish some SMAC goals. So of course they have to be smart and achievable, measurable, all that kind of stuff. We don't want to set goals that are unrealistic because that's impacting both the company and the project and the team itself. Really kind of setting those clear goals that everybody can see, keep us accountable, and also let the company know how the progress is. And then diagram the desired structure. So after we've identified the system, set the goals, we really need to diagram out how those are going to work together in an ideal state and start identifying those areas where we're going to have to invest more time over others. After we've diagrammed out the structure, we've moved into the structure creation phase where we're creating the back-end system. We're looking at the coding, looking at how we're bringing all of those data sources together, all of the databases, how is it going to code, how is it going to read, that kind of stuff, the technical, systematic aspect. In conjunction, while that's happening, because it's certainly going to take the majority of the time, most of the time here is spent in that third quadrant in the structure creation. While that's happening, you have your end user team working on brainstorming what they want the actual interface to look like. We've already given kind of a template on what the end user interface could look like, but of course, if a company wants to modify that to their specific needs, if they want to bring in other things, that can also be negotiated in. So while they're kind of brainstorming the user interface system, they can be working with the backend users, kind of saying, hey, is this possible, going back and forth? And after they've kind of reached an agreement that they can both move forward and continue, they can develop the user interface as well. So the end back structure is now reaching completion. They're developing the user interface. And then in that step 4, we're going to merge them together where you have the backend system and the user interface finally working in conjunction. and that would enter stage 5 of that quadrant, which is the utilize test environment. So you've got kind of your queue system for the project team. We're sitting in there kind of tweaking, monkeying with the system, trying to simulate different things that could happen and work through those kinks before you get actual end users involved. Really utilize that time in the test environment. So the training and implementation phase, identify those individuals out of the project team that are going to be your lead trainers. So they really need to know the system. They need to understand how to work with end users, how to best explain things, how to put together the proper documentation, which is step 2, and how to train the stakeholders, those people that are really invested in this from maybe an upper management level, or maybe your mid-managers are the ones that really need to be trained. Or maybe the company has a key user structure and you need to train the key users first. So identifying those stakeholders that really need to be the first ones trained, and then having the project team train those individuals. And then rolling into the implementation phase and gathering feedback. So now that you kind of have an overview of the 4 planning phases, we're going to talk about the how. How does ads come together systematically to create this back-end system user interface that helps increase productivity for the everyday employee? So ads works in conjunction with a company's already established security settings, email system, and data filing structures. So we're really looking to take what's already there and add to it, rather than forcing companies to migrate all of their existing data and all of their systems over to a new system. That creates a lot of added complexity and added work and added risk that companies might not be willing to make for a system of this nature. So we're really looking to come in, bring in a back-end kind of prototype structure that can be modified slightly based on what a company already has, and add to their current existing structure rather than forcing them to come over to ours. You know, companies are looking for solutions to add productivity, but maybe they don't always want to spend the money needed. Forcing companies to convert over to a completely new structure would add more time and more money into the equation, whereas if we come in with already a prototype system, we can generally implement it a lot faster and save company some money that they might spend on converting all of their end users over to a completely new system. So it creates a system-driven database where communications and files are coded and connections are created. So much like how you can create connections in an Access database, the system is doing that by itself. So as documents are saved and a user has permission to them, or as they send and receive emails, the system is coding them in the background, looking for connections that can be made. So when those keywords are entered into the search bar, it's already populating that information. It's retrieving it on a quicker basis. You know, end users don't want to enter something in the search bar and then wait 10 minutes for the information to populate. That's not really the point of the system. The point is for it to increase productivity and allow them to work quicker and more efficiently. So user-entered keywords are used for categorization and identification. Relevant files and communications are returned and displayed to the user, which they can then access. So looking at the system architecture for this, there's 2 layers. There's a user interface layer, which you've already seen in the end user interface, and then there's a data access layer. So that user interface, again, is you're doing your keyword searching, your filtering, and your recent search history. Those are really kind of the only things the user can be doing other than opening the files themselves. But in the data access layer, it's showing you the different databases or storage areas where the information is being pulled from. So you've got your email server, maybe your Outlook or whatever other email, maybe they use Gmail, whatever is there with the system for the company, your email server. You've got your personal computer drive, so that's your H drive, so anything that you can save directly to just your user ID for your company, your H drive, that's what that would be. The shared company drive, that's more like your iDrive information, so something that's published that all other users with access to those data folders can go into. Your web access storage, maybe your company utilizes things such as SharePoint or global iDrives or things where people from all over via VPN can be accessing it and going in and out of the files. And then off to the far right of the data access layer, there's a category called systematic classifications. So that's the database that the system here is adding, no pun intended, to the company, so their software structure. So the systematic classifications are the coding and the keyword connections that the system is making when you save an email, of course that's not possible, save a file and send or receive an email. And up above that on the user interface layer, but off separated by a dark black line because it is kind of a calculation that the system is doing on the user interface level, is the keyword categorization and the identification. So when you're entering in the search bar, kind of the calculations that are going on at the user interface level, connecting back to the systematic classifications, which are connecting over to all of your databases throughout your system. So this is all based on a series of entities and attributes that these specific entities have. So we're looking at what are the main entities that have a role in the system. So off on the far right, you have your employees. Those are your users, your end users. Those are the only people really listed in this system description here because it's really done on a user basis. But the other four are showing the different types of documents or files or emails that the system is interacting with. So you have your web-based documents, your SharePoints or things distributed on a internet level through a company. You still need access or need to be an employee, of course, to look at them or use them, but they're on the web. Your communication documents, your emails, things you're sending and receiving for communication, the departmental organizational documents. So maybe your company has a structure where those in logistics look at logistics files and they have very limited access to the marketing files or very limited access to the sales files. If your company is set up that way, you might have departmental or organizational documents. If it's in a free-for-all and everybody can see everything and it's a very open company, of course, those would just be your company documents. And then your personal documents, so things that are saved to your desktop or your H drive that really only the end user has access to. The system is still going to recognize those because you do have to log in, it's on your own laptop, and so forth. So looking at the different attributes for the different entities, of course, you can see things such as title or subject, dates, either sent or received or created or edited or updated, what type of document it is, how big is it, what kind of rights does that user have to that type of information? What are the key words that the system is picking up on? That kind of stuff. Who created it? Who sent it? Who received it? Anything that is kind of attributing back to a document or an email or file would be listed as an attribute. And those are all things that the system is going to be sifting through when it's coding and looking for those connections. And then this is how each document kind of interacts to one another. So of course, the vast majority of what you see here is share subject matter, because that's really the point of the system, as you're looking for that shared information, shared keywords, subject matter between either your personal documents and your emails or your organizational documents and your web-based documents. They all can have intermingled information, and that's what we're trying to get at, is the information that's shared on a keyword basis, so that when the user looks for that, they get all of this information populated on their desktop or on their screen. Of course, the employee can either be sent to, received the email, or create the file, access the file, so on and so forth, but that's really the only interactions these are having. Are they share subject matter, or maybe they have systematic links to one another, or they're created by the same person or sent by the same person, that type of information. So going into the actual implementation of the system, it's really important to think about how we're going to implement this to the end user. If you've ever been a part of a rollout of a system that's gone really poorly in the first, let's say, 2 weeks, the end user trust in that system is really, really low. Users don't really want to go back to that system. They second guess it for a really long time, it's really hard to get over that hurdle of having a failed implementation. So thinking about how we as the project team are really going to approach this implementation is really important. We're thinking to use a parallel run approach. We're calling it a parallel run, but it's really just a combination of a big bang with a focus group testing. So over a weekend, maybe it's updated on everyone's laptops, or maybe over the course of a week, or however big the company is, really, that can be kind of looked at in the scope of the overall project. But the user comes in, there's been a big bang, but it's only on the focus group at first. Really go through this queue testing with a focus group as well to really work on how the end users are going to interact with the system, how they're going to perceive it from the very beginning, because it's really important to work out as many of the kinks in the first couple weeks as possible with the focus group and then roll it out to everyone else after. This also would allow time for the trainers to look at how they're going to train the end users, kind of work through the kinks in their approach on training with a test group rather than rolling it out to, let's say, a company of 2,000 people and having it go really poorly. So to get the confidence up in the trainers, get the confidence up in the end users, we're going to utilize a test group to allow them time to tweak their documentation, tweak their training approach, and tweak the system itself so we are ready to go when we roll it out to the entire company. And then the last little portion of this is the feedback. So feedback is really important to the longevity of this project, to the success of the implementation and the success of the overall system itself. Of course, the project team is going to have to update periodically based on new systems that get rolled out at companies, or maybe we make modifications ourselves and we want to update the system and how it's working. We come up with a way that makes it faster or a cool new user interface button that everybody loves. We want to roll it out. But of course, sometimes that information isn't just thought up by the project team, it's brought about by feedback from the end users themselves. So really use end user suggestions, allow them to kind of reach out, give feedback to their company and to us on how their experience is going with the system. Maybe we can measure the productivity that we've saved a company based on the feedback we get from the employees. Maybe we use a survey. We start with the test group and then we do it in waves on the other groups to really measure, are we saving productivity? Is it working as designed? Are there improvements to be made? What are the areas for concern? What are the areas of success? And use that to modify and enhance the system after we've rolled it out to the company, to provide feedback to management, and really just to grow as a project team and to grow as a system. So overall, this adds valuable time back to the workdays of employees. This is done based on saving productivity and adding overall efficiency back into the lives of the everyday employee, looking for a solution on how to organize all that chaos going on around them as we embrace all the technological advances around us. I really hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. That if you have any questions, please reach out to me, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.